try to switch up. Yeah, thanks. Let's see. Is this is amplifying me, right? So we'll see. We'll make sure it works for the with the readers or with the people who want to speak. I'm Eric, and this is Bird and Beckett. That's where you are, and I'm kind of here all the time, I think. So, and Nancy was here a lot for many years. I guess Diane DePrima started a habit of bringing in readers, three students of hers, workshop people of hers, three at a time to sort of school them in how to give a reading and how to promote their readings and how to all that, and also just give them a chance to have a voice. So that was a really wonderful thing, and Nancy was in that coterie of folks for years, and then read here many, many times after that. There's a nice flyer there for one that she did with Stephen Coppell. But yeah, we knew her pretty well. I mean, she was always very generous to the store, and for the last couple of years, she's been supporting the poetry readings here. Actually, she was doing a regular monthly donation to the nonprofit we have, and that gave us enough money to not go out of pocket to pay the poets to read. We just give them a little $25 honorarium and pay a couple folks to sort of run the series and then help support Kim Shuck's reading on Zoom that happens a couple times a month. So we owe Nancy for that. But that was just one in a long succession of nice encounters and relationships with her. So I'm very glad y'all are here, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about Nancy and hearing a little of Nancy too. So there are books around, and Marty will explain a whole lot more than I will right now. I'll just give way to Marty, okay? All right. Come on back.
Been a while since I've been in front of a mic, right? Okay. Well, anyway, thank you all for coming. It's so nice to connect some faces with names that I've heard about over the years from Nancy, and to see people that I haven't seen in years again. So, and to see some new friends that I've made recently who've come into the picture and really been so wonderfully supportive to Nancy, to her spirit, actually. And so we really appreciate your being here. That's the intention of tonight, really. There are a few poets around here in the audience that are going to read some of Nancy's poems, and maybe a poem of, if they want, of theirs, or not. It's totally optional, okay? And also, we'll have some time for people to share any particular sentiments or memories that they want about Nancy after we've concluded reading some of her poetry, for anyone who wants to give a voice to their sentiments, right? There's also a notebook going around, I think, with an opportunity to write in there as well. So we thought we'd start tonight, actually, by hearing Nancy read a poem. It was her, Wiley, right, her nephew, Wiley, sent us, is that correct, Suzanne? Sent us. Yeah, I think he found it on YouTube and sent us Nancy reading one of her poems. And so Eric is kindly going to project that for us to hear, because, you'll hear her voice. And we'll get started with that.
End of the road. Once you rode across country in motorcycle triumph, Kalash
that YouTube, we can send anybody who wants the link to that. If you would like, just let us know. Oh, sorry. Just let us know. That better? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. I forget that my friend is here. So we do have a number of people who are wanting to read tonight, right? A few of you. I can get us started mostly because this was a requested. This was a requested poem. Thank you. And it was one actually that I was thinking of wanting to read because it's so San Franciscan, and Nancy was really a San Franciscan at heart. You know, she came from the East Coast. She had many different lives, right? But this was where she landed and loved. So her heart was really in San Francisco. So here's a little San Francisco story. Can you all hear okay? Okay. It's called Waiting for Muni. Last month, I finally did it. I sold Hot Lips and decided to place my fate in the hands of Muni. My car had given me many years of faithful service, but she was growing increasingly temperamental, refusing to start in the morning and breaking down at the most inconvenient times. In these moments of crisis, the buses and streetcars always provided fast, efficient service. The day after I sold my car, I was invited to a party on Corbett Street. My hostess urged me to come. Lots of delicious people and interesting food, she said. And it's easy to get here, okay? You take the N. Judah to Cole and Carl. Then change to the 37 Corbett. I remember all these lines, by the way. Okay. I get invited to one or two parties every 2 years, so this was a major event for me, like going to opening night at the opera. I went out in the street to wait for the streetcar. I waited and waited and waited. The sun went down and the cold wind came up. So San Francisco, right? A crowd began to gather at the car stop. Oh boy, I thought, what's happened? Why isn't the N. Judah on time when I really need it? Maybe one of the cars is stuck in the tunnel. Maybe a mob of frustrated commuters has taken over Muni. Maybe. I started remembering all the horror stories I had read about Muni in the paper. Suddenly, a streetcar appeared over the crest of the hill, then another and another, all heading towards the ocean. They stopped and sat on the tracks like hens waiting to hatch. We began to play, What's Wrong with Muni this time? Okay. Quote, it could be a loose screw under one of the cars. The screw that keeps them on the track, said a young man with curly hair. Probably a loose screw in the driver's head, muttered a woman holding a crying baby. Okay. No, said the white-haired man, it's the computer. The computers on some of the lines have been going down and nobody knows why. I was pouting and leaning against a stop sign, thinking, I'll never get to the party. When out of the crowd, a man with a flowing Lawrence of Arabia headdress approached me. I like your hairs. They are sweet, he says. You have husband and children? Yes and no, I answered, inventing a husband. He looks confused for a minute and then continues. You have come a little drink with me? My wife died in Lebanon 2 years ago. Since then, I have no woman. Bad. Man and woman go together, sleep together. But first we drink together. Get to know each other is good. Then sleep together. My name is Mike. Okay. This man knows what he wants. He doesn't need EST or any kind of S training, excuse me, and assertive training. No, Mike, I can't. I'm going to a party. No good. Your hairs are so sweet, and I speak English no good. He sighs and shrinks into his suit. No, you speak English well. Is good? I no go to school. I learn English from the people. He stands straighter and pushes his chest out. You come with me and we have a little drink. No, Mike, I'm going to a party. No good. Sit by me a little bit, he adds, taking my hand and nodding at the streetcar, which has finally started moving and approaching our stop. I wiggle my hand out of his grasp. He can speak English, but does he understand the meaning of the word no? Okay. I get on the streetcar ahead of everybody else. Mike sits down next to me and puts his hand on my thigh. I remove it. No, Mike, I say loudly. The other passengers stare at us. Okay. Tell me, he says after a minute of silence, how can I meet woman here? I 70 years old, no good alone, want woman. Okay. I think of tea dances, clubs, senior citizens activities, but none of them seem appropriate for him. Okay. You could advertise in the paper. My eye's no good. I have operation. I get off here. He kisses my hand in farewell and vanishes into the night. I get off at Cole and Carl. A handsome couple huddling against the cold assure me that the bus should arrive at any minute. They've been waiting a half hour. Okay. Once again, I wait. A young man with an orange mohawk, safety pin in his nose, and chains dangling from his ears walks by and offers me a joint. Here, he says, I don't smoke the stuff, but it's supposed to be some dynamite shit. Okay, so I share the pot with the handsome couple and watch people double and triple park while they run in and out of the liquor store. By this time, I have a silly grin pasted on my face, and I'm dreaming about the delicious food and the people I'll meet at the party. Okay. The bus finally arrives. I sit in the back and stare out at the window as it lurches through the twisting streets of Corona Heights and begins its descent towards Market Street. The lights of the city are spread out before me, sparkling rhinestones sewn on a black velvet evening gown. This has to be one of the most romantic rides in the city. The spectacular views drive the food fantasies out of my head. I wish that I had someone to cuddle with in the back seat of the bus. I think about Mike. Okay. I finally arrive at the party on Corbett Street, only to find a table covered with dirty dishes, empty wine bottles, and serving platters with 1 or 2 sprigs of parsley and cold pizza crust. A couple of people are passing out on the couch, and my hostess is busy in the bedroom. I decide that I had my party waiting for Muni and call a cab to take me home. Okay. The next day, I take Muni downtown. I see a man in a flowing white headdress talking to a woman at one of the N Judah stops. It's Mike. I knock on the window, but he doesn't notice me or the streetcar. The N Judah rattles down the tracks until we come into the corner of Cole and Carl, where we stop and wait. The driver's voice comes over the intercom. We are experiencing a momentary delay because of a breakdown ahead of us. We will be moving in 5 minutes. The other passengers groan. I pull out a battered copy of Moby Dick and begin reading. Thank you, Nancy. So, now that you've gotten into Nancy vibe a little bit, I hope, is there anybody who would like to read next? Anyone in particular?
I would like to.
Please.
Wakeman. I, of those who knew her and her poetry, she was a wonderful poet and a really fine woman. I just the other day was at Green Apple Books, which is near where I live, and I was at the poetry shelf, and I saw a book of mine, and I opened it up, and it said, to Nancy it was used copy, to Nancy Wakeman, poet and seer, and that was a book that was published about 1910 maybe, 1910, and they were selling it for $7, and I thought that's nice, and it was right next, pretty much right in the area where Marianne Moore's books are, and I loved Marianne Moore, so that's the reason I wrote this poem. Nancy Wakeman, poet and seer. Children crush crackers between stones, celebrating luck and joy, seeing with ears, breathing music from trees flowering in pure deliciousness, awakening graves unarmed against the rain. In time, silence, stoning sterile trees, praying the dead will sleep between the swollen roots. The wind rushes in saying, hold my ground, carve your own road, the design that develops. A face then begins to emerge, seeking air, examining death to discover patterns in the movements of little lifetimes. Not a knot, a knot. A pivoting puzzle locks and unlocks, signals or turns and opens, explains, answers, winds up the slack, centers the music, regulates the pitch, raises the courage, nerves you up as you struggle a low island in the reef, waters opening a door under the garden, in surrender saying, use me, Nancy, I am your key. And when I was writing about Nancy, I was thinking of Al Molina, who was a trumpeter who died just a few years ago. He used to play in Dog Patch, and he used to play at the 7 Mile House, and all these things that were known to Nancy, who knew all these things. And I just think she was a wonderful woman, and I'm very lucky to have known her. And she makes you write, and write right. And the knot is K-N-O-T, and it's not.
Thank you. Is there someone else who would like to? Amy, did you want to? And then Alice.
You can go next if you want.
Well, no, you go. Go
Okay.
next.
I knew Nancy, gosh, Marty, when was that we all,
Oh gosh, maybe 20 years ago.
20 years ago, yeah. And when I discovered what an amazing writer she was, we would get together and write. I was deeply inspired by her prose. And one of the things I so appreciated about her was her celebration of sexuality and how she reveled in it in a way that made it accessible and possible. So this is from Delicious 13, Nancy's chapbook, and it's called Whatever Happened To. We escape the hot glare of vanity lights, exit the numbers game of fame and money, recline on cushions on the back porch, sip peppermint schnapps. Full moon a dark orange from yet another forest fire. Nobody asks about us anymore. No one knows where to place us in polite conversation. We open ourselves to wildlife, avian concertos all morning, throbbing chant of crickets and cicadas into the night, off-key arias fly from our lips. And we indulge in that green-winged longing, taste the fragrance of our aging flesh, feel the throb of our tender bones. Your tongue, ruby-throated hummingbird, plunges into my sweet, rosy mouth. In this brown land of dry wood and dirt, we build a leafy, green nest. No, that was Nancy.
I'm Alice Rogoff. I'm one of the editors of the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal. I think Nancy was a subscriber for many years. I always remember her being at readings with Kit Kennedy, who I guess they were good friends. And I was surprised to see the journals, the 2 issues that she was in up here. But I'm going to read from one of them. This is called Moments. To pray, I open my whole self to sky, to earth, the sun, moon, and sea. Yet there is more than I can't hear or see, can't know except in moments. Like the red mare galloping along the beach Wednesday evening, mane and tail flying, racing beyond the track, the finish line, the triple crown, open-hearted, racing to meet the double rainbow. The beat of her hooves on the sand, the beat of the red heart in me, the mare a red flash, flying into the sunset, racing the rainbow, the sea swallows her hoof prints. I stumble through the shifting sand and call to the red mare. I want to jump on her back to be the jockey who races to the end of the rainbow. Together we can touch the salty stars. I pray to the galloping red mare, listen to the rhythm of her hooves, the beat of my red heart, and know that I am many times blessed, because I was born into this circle of sun and rain, sand and sea, and I will die soon, breathing deep into the ground with the one voice that is me.
Wow, beautiful.
This other one, equally beautiful, is called First Breath of Spring. All winter long, Great Mother Bear sleeps. One day, splinters of light enter her cave and won't go out. Every breath brings a fresh smell, pungent but delicate. The rumbling earth begins to beat. Tree roots twist, ripping unexplored pathways through the earth. Great Mother Bear feels the hot hand of love on her back and shakes off her winter sleep, leaves the comfort of her cubs, the safety of her home, and lumbers through the forest, promises of spring hiding in her fur. It is the custom of her tribe to bring news of the green world to people who live in towns and cities and walk on concrete, to bring news of the planets to those who do not hear the songs of the stars. Great Mother Bear loves humans in their fickle hearts that swing open shut, their useless claws, their tender feet. She smells the ancient fears hidden in their bodies and knows how they love their guns, how they believe they are brave. Great Mother Bear is courageous and clever. She pads through cities light as morning mist, silent as steam rising from a manhole cover. She ruffles the hairs on people's necks with her warm breath of love and opens their surprised eyes to the new light of spring.
Oh my God.
I bring greetings from Jane Green, who now lives in Sino, who would like to have been here, and Sherry Rose Walker, who lives in Berkeley. Nancy and I particularly exchange poems every December and January for whatever reason, and I went through some of them, and this is the one that I like the most. It's titled Two Poets Meet. A poet sits on Liberty Hill steps, watches the sunset behind Twin Peaks, dazzling golden light, soft breezes from the sea. A crow soars in looping circles over streets, green trees, houses, stops right above her head, plunges straight down head first for 5 feet or so. The poet gasps. The earthbound creature that she is sits her ground. The crow levels off, flies in large looping circles. Slanting sun polishes feathers, black gold. Crow pauses above her, dives straight down, stops, changes course, rides the gentle breeze around the neighborhood. Crow hovers over her head, flies in circles around her earthbound friend. Two poets celebrating peace. I've just finished a book about hugs, and it has poems and essays and whatever. This is a poem which I think Nancy would enjoy. The title is Question of Hug Duration. Please avoid that yo-yo or proverbial bounce hug. You're gone 1/2 second after impact. For a memorable short hug, count to yourself. With a pace, you would count maple leaf cookies. 1 cookie, 2 cookies, 3 cookies. Absolutely no hint of a rush. Longer hugs can be enriched by an appropriate hug homily and a warm, spirited voice tone. For example, 1. You smell like lilac. Knowing sigh. 2. It's been too long. 3. How's your personal trainer's French bulldog puppy, sweet little Pierre? 4. Remember, Shakespeare said, thought is free. Don't forget, always maintain a sincere smile on your mug as you unhug. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Well, I think it was about a year ago. I was walking down, over the hill from here. I think in the direction I'm pointing, just down Castro Street, and that's her territory. And I would see her sometimes walking, and I think it was something like a year ago. And I had just seen, on Castro Street, probably above the house where she lived. I'm not sure, but there was, a picture window. It was a house, and on one side of the house, inside the house, there was a canary, and the canary was in a cage, and the canary was looking out at the street, and on the other side of the window, on the outside of the house, a crow came and flew down, and I just, the crow and the canary just kind of like, interacted, through the pane of glass, and I just noted this and walked on, and I thought, that crow probably does not mean the canary well, and the canary probably, is, knows that the crow is another kind of bird, so it's like, some kind of greeting with each other. Anyway, and then later on, I think down on 17th Street, I ran into Nancy, or, I walked by her. She was going down the sidewalk, and I just happened to say, "Oh, hi, Nancy," hi, she said, and I told her about seeing the crow and the canary, and and she nodded her head, and then we went our ways. And so now, hearing all of these texts, which, she clearly, her inspiration is taking this form, for us. Well, the pane of glass is also a text, right? And the wild creatures, the creatures on either side, domestic and wild, meeting there. This too is a text, and I was able to mention this to her, so I just wanted to mention that. And also, so I looked online, and she wrote an article in the Tricycle Review about working in the Zen hospice, or working in the hospice, and so it's really clear and straightforward writing, and it too is of great value. So I wanted to mention that, and so now I'll read just a part of 2 poems of hers. This one is the latter part of a poem called "What I Do in San Francisco." And believe it or not, these texts, have more to do with our actual history than anything in any mass media. We know this, It's our little secret, though. It's okay. We can keep it between us, because it's poetry because of that. Anyway, so she writes, I ponder the space between stars, the distances between people, the miles we travel to meet. My feet climb up Liberty Hill, past houses with dark windows. Questions make themselves at home in my mind. What creates this infinite space and fills it with pulsing stars? What is the place of Homo sapiens in the universe? And the universe, what is its place in us? How long are the journeys we take to know one another? I am again 8 years old, body tingling with wonder. You see?
Take that last sentence.
Yes, she says, yes, she says, how long are the journeys we take to know one another? I am again 8 years old, body tingling with wonder, So yeah, it's like the human form, right? It is the human form. And so here she says, what the Spirit wants. This is called What the Spirit Wants. Heedless of the roses growing between our feet, we stare at the past through cloudy glass, stand on tiptoe to peer into the future, and fill the moaning fiddle of our life with tears. Their pencils on fire, our children burn buildings with angry words, and yet the Spirit wants to clothe itself in flesh and dwell among us. We fill the moaning fiddle of our life with tears, clothe our minds with threadbare thought. Still the Spirit wants to clothe itself in flesh and dwell among us, while the wild heart of life beats in a rag and bone shop. We clothe our minds in threadbare thought, dam our rivers so the salmon cannot spawn, slaughter the trees so the owl has no home. Even so, love hides in blackberry brambles and sleeps in urine-soaked hallways while our children burn buildings. We dam our rivers so the salmon can't spawn, slaughter the trees so the owl has no home. Heedless of the roses growing between our feet, we stare at the past through cloudy glass, stand on tiptoe to peer into the future. Still, the Spirit wants to clothe itself and dwell among us. So she discovered this. And so here's a poem that came out of that kind of world of language, that and so I'll just read this, and this is in a sense, this is like a way, to commune, with her gift. The poem is called Again and Again. It's called And Again. In a sense, we ourselves are time, projecting forms to frame our flow in and out of what we are not, yet are. For what is made in us is life. in which we make the things to keep it, turning it into an it inevitably. The weirdness of making names for the cloud shadows that speak, grasping at fallen stars as if they were straw, so aquiline and oceanic. Breath bathing in wind, in ignorance as much as knowledge, the original praise, the making that is also non-doing, the ununderstanding that understands again. So it is an ongoing thing, right? So.
Okay. Well, Nancy was not only a good friend and a good writer, but she really brought out the best in everyone. She taught a class, a poetry class, and her spaciousness, and everybody here knows Nancy, she just has this spaciousness about her and openness, and it just allowed a lot of juicy poems to flow through. It was an incredible class. And I'm glad you read, I couldn't find that poem. Anyway, she read, so, Nancy was always also, she was open to any, almost all possibilities, she would just go with the flow and all kinds of, she was just, she's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful human being. Once you're touched by someone, they're always present, right here and right now. And so I found this poem, and I don't know, for some reason I wanted to read it. It's called 5 Photos of a Flounder. 1, low tide. Rough pink cat, tongue lick/flesh from flounder bones. Red sun sinks into mud. 2, mackerel sky promises rain. Flounder promises fish on Friday for Cape Cod Catholics. 3, Fred flounder through philosophy, searching for a God hidden in dusty piles of words. Flounders float through dim water, eyes pointed at the light. 4, hurricane winds shake the house, hurtle stones against the door. The child cries, buries herself in her mother's warm white bed. Remembering the chaos of creation, the flounder buries itself in white sand and waits. 5, 40 flounder fillets swimming in white wine on Waterford crystal. 4 finger bowls, 4 lace dollies, 4 Windsor chairs sit at the white linen table. Christ fed thousands with 1 fish.
I was in the writing group also with Nancy. It turns out apparently there are several writing groups. Ours was held always at Nancy's flat. If we had put together a little collection of some of our best work, we think it would have come out called 717,
Wow, yeah.
which is a nice looking number,
Mhm.
but we didn't get there. But we had monthly for 12 or 13 years a meeting. So that was the best writing group that I've been in, and
Wow.
almost the only one, but really a good group. Marvin was in it at the beginning, Patrick was in it at the end, and then lost some people along the way. But I miss the group. I mean, I do write, but I do miss the group and having to show up. So it meant a lot to me. And she was a great host, and somebody talked about her, you talked about her spaciousness, but the moment you said it, I thought you were talking almost about her flat. Because the flat is really, the way I think of it is, it actually has at the back, I was only back there once, it has an open, porch, but it's kind of a room kind of a porch. It isn't just a porch, it's a whole thing. But I was only there we're back there once. But so several of the rooms seemed to be a series of terraces, the indoor terraces, really kind of what it was. There's a lot of, it's a very nice flat. There's a very nice light in there, as well decorated. It's just a pleasure always to be there, and always calm place to come to. I just wanted to speak to a couple of things. One is, you spoke to how she wrote about, for you, but how she wrote about sexuality. And I just wanted said, I had the same experience, maybe not yours, but I had the same notion of her, same sense of her. And I remember at one of the poetry readings, her reading a poem, and then it wasn't that I thanked her, but I remember sitting next to her afterwards, and I wasn't sitting next to her during the reading, but sitting next to her and telling her, "You're the only person I know. You're the only poet I know who actually talks about testicles in a way that's pleasant and nice and inviting, and just a good view, a good sense." And I meant that, and I found myself, as I said it, that's ridiculous. But she did do that, and she did elicit that from me. So it was just something she could do, but she could do many things with her work. So what I thought I would read is, I'm not saying it's one of the last things she wrote, but it's one of the last things that our group, that she did read. And it has a certain formality about it, but I will say that Nancy could do many different kinds of poetry and talk in different voices, but a lot of the time she would actually, this sounds a little bit like a prayer to me, or an invocation of sorts, but she would talk to gods, and she seemed to have a very easy time talking to gods. Anyway, it's called Calliope. Muse of heroic poetry, you inspired the blind poet Homer, who sang of Odysseus and his heroic journey home after the Trojan Wars. Every life is a heroic journey. Calliope, whisper words in my ear, inspire me to love harder and longer, and to sing from my heart. The moon rolls through the sky, the earth rolls around the sun, tides flow in and out every day. The green world and all the animals live heroic lives, but they speak a language I do not know. Calliope, speak to me of the heroic journeys of women who give birth and raise children, these women who give shelter and daily bread to the stranger. Speak to me of the heroic journeys deep into oneself to discover the yearnings of the soul. Calliope, Sometimes I spend a whole day without speaking a poem or even a word. Calliope, whisper words in my ear. So anyway, that was last September. That was what she brought last September. And so this is a piece. Nancy loved, grew up around water, was on the water a lot. It was just a part of her family and sailing and all that. I didn't know her that well, but she did talk about it a bit. I should say, I don't know how well I knew her, I would put it that way. But so I kind of see her here in this poem. I prefer to see her in the setting of water. And I've looked for her in this poem that I wrote a while back, and I read alongside her and Jane Radis and Stephen Coppell. And so she knew this poem. It's titled "The Go-Between." It's very short. Tonight I'll call it "Casting Off." As from an open envelope, the same slim canoe sets off. You? Where? Where to? The morning splendid on this lake, for body coasting body. All afternoon through these skies, all the night, mind moves as long as it will take. The crossings here are infinite. Thanks to Nancy.
It's so wonderful to be here with you. I don't know what to say. Hearing all these wonderful voices, I'm really touched, and I know Nancy would be too. We were part of a small poetry group, also writing, but mostly we ate and talked and caught up with what was going on in our lives. But it was wonderful to be together always. And I wanted to read, actually, maybe two things, I'm not sure. But the one thing I'm sure I wanted to read, because we had to go into the house, into Nancy's house afterwards and, try to organize her things. And one of the things I found was on her refrigerator door. It was a poem. And it was not her poem. It was by Tom Crawford. So that's the one I'm choosing to read tonight. And you're right. It's about the sea, and she grew up there, and so a lot of her poems have to do with water. It's called "Companion to a Loon." So you died, caught, I'll bet, in that gill net out there that was held up by those big orange balls that stretch halfway across the bay. The fishermen had to haul you up, then disentangle you like so much stringy green kelp. It's unnatural that you should drown that way. A perfect invention to water. I'm sure I watched you the day before yesterday, working the quiet shallows around the boat dock, straight out from my little cabin. Listen, bird, I'm past making death sad. The tide has no time for wakes or tragedies. We're either coming in or going out. It's like that. The soul, for a while, boxed up in feathers, or this frail human body of mine, I'm just taking a little time out from my walk because, well, your drowned body is here at my feet, even in death, moving unruffled. Is there someone else who'd like to read? Well, this is also a time, I think, for people who want to share any particular memories or stories of Nancy that would like to do that. To share it with us while we're all gathered here together. Would you like to?
So my name is Nick Meredith, and I have the pleasure and sometimes great sadness working for the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. And Nancy was a great lover of music and young people, and I got to know her in 2019 when I first started there. And this has been borne out by everything I've heard this evening. She immediately grabbed my attention because she understood the complexities and infinite pleasures and curiosities about the soul and how it experienced this human condition in all of its many facets. And we shared a few moments together talking about wacky things, I'll just say that. I knew that she and I had shared some past common experiences. I think we were both EST graduates.
Oh, okay.
So I immediately felt that sense of spaciousness around her that you mentioned, and I always knew that whenever I met with her, I'd have to bring my whole self, which is not something I have to do for everybody, but I felt I was compelled to do out of respect and honor of who she was. And she and we had some fun together. I knew she had a great love of chocolate. I'd have intense pleasure sending her C's candies for birthdays and Christmases and surprise presents and something from Fortnum and Mason when I went back to London. But I was always struck by her quiet, passionate love of music and what it took for a young person to become good at music, and that's the world I live in. She was very fond of jazz, so I'm not surprised this is being held here at Beckett. She also loved to support women of colour from underrepresented communities, and she set up a scholarship at the Conservatory of Music to support people of colour, especially women of colour from underrepresented communities, African American, Latinx, international students, because she wanted to champion the human spirit as well as talent. And unfortunately, it makes me very sad that she didn't get the opportunity to meet with her last scholarship student, who is a young African American woman from Houston, is an amazing singer. And she was visibly upset when I had to give her the news just in January that Nancy had passed away. But I felt like I got to know her in a different way that I know most of the people that interact with me at the conservatory. My job entails, it's called legacy giving, so I have a long relationship with people. It's not just a one-off transactional nature. And I feel like certain people become part of my tribe and the family, and she was definitely a founder member of that. And the rest of the community that I work with, they wanted me to pass on, especially my boss, that she just loved Nancy, and she really wanted me to say, and unfortunately her father had just passed, she wanted me to say, how honoured she was to have met Nancy, and she felt like she was a really magnificent human. So on the conservatory's behalf, but also me personally, I want to thank Nancy for being who she was, who she is in this room right now as a spirit, and for giving what she wanted to give so quietly and powerfully and with such a dedicated heart to the things that she loved. So thank you for letting me be here tonight, and I know there's going to be another memorial.
There will be a larger memorial with family coming from the East Coast, and in September the 10th.
And we will provide music from the scholar she wants to come and sing. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming here. Well, I know that it's very emotional. It's very emotional for me to be here tonight with you all, actually, and hearing the poetry come alive again. You know, it was wonderful. And is there anyone else who feels they want to read anything or say anything before we conclude tonight? Or?
I guess
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to, just because I'm inspired to do so. I'm Suzanne. I met Nancy in the mid-90s. But I just have to say, being here and listening and seeing all of you and listening to this, I'm just like, with all the, as we say, mishigas that happens with the passing and the going through things and the organizing and the, oh my gosh. It's just really nice to sit here and hear everybody and just hear her voice. And it just was not supposed to happen like that. So, just think about it, and it's just so nice to be around and here. And I know poetry was so important to her and a part of her being. And anyway, I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. And there is a book going around if anybody wants to write anything. Somewhere, I know where it is. If anyone feels that they would like to write a sentiment to Nancy. And there are, thank you for reminding me, there are extra copies of chapbooks that anyone that would like to. They're over here by the food.
Did you get one?
They're of which two?
It's the Shooting Arrows of the Moon and the Prisoners of the Earth.
Yeah.
So, and there's lots of food. So
Yes.
if you want to take some
you got
home
a bag
too, we
here?
can arrange for that.
How much else is
I just started out with a bus thing. I didn't think that existed anymore.